I'm going to make a prediction, and then we can come back in 2 or 3 months and see if I was right. So in the late 90s, the Fed kept interest rates too low for too long, created a bubble. Bubble popped, it caused a financial crisis and ultimately a recession. Uh, then they did the same thing coming out of that recession. They forced interest rates too low for too long. Again, it created another bubble. Uh, this time the bubble popped, created a bigger financial catastrophe and a much deeper recession. They have not learned their lesson. They've done the same thing. They've kept interest rates at basically at zero for 8 years, and they've printed trillions and trillions of currency units, central banks all over the world, and they're expecting a different result. I'm going to say that they're going to get the same result that they did the first two times. I think the bubble is in the bond market. That's where the irrational behavior has manifested, in my opinion. We've got negative rates. People are paying bankrupt governments for the right to lend them their money, knowing that they can never pay back the debts. In my view, that's the definition of irrational. So I think that's where the bubble is at in sovereign bond markets. So here's what I'm going to predict is going to happen. And like I said, 3 months from now, we can look back and see if I was right. I think right now, I think a lot of people are complacent. They think this severe move down in the bond market is just a normalization of interest rates. I think they're wrong. I think it's the beginning of the sovereign debt bubble popping. I don't think we're going to get a very big bounce. I think we probably got a temporary bottom here, but I don't think the bounce is going to get very far before we roll over and we start down again. And I think the second leg down um, of this um, collapse or crash, I think it's going to be at least a semi-crash. I think the second leg down will be driven by something entirely different than the first leg. This first leg, like I said, I think people are complacent. They think this is just a normalization of rates. This is not causing any fear in the market. And people are assuming that this is positive for stocks. The second leg down, if this bounce is very weak to non-existent, and then the second leg down, I think the second leg down is going to be driven by fear that there's something broken in the bond market, and I don't think that leg down, if that happens, if the next leg down is driven by fear, I don't think that is positive for virtually anything. I think it's going to be negative for stocks. I think it'll be negative for the dollar. I think it'll be negative for probably the energy market. The only thing that it might be positive for would be gold. So we can look back in 2 or 3 months and see if I was right. But I think the black swan is brewing in the sovereign debt markets, and I don't think we're going to get much of a bounce here. And then I think the next leg down is going to be driven by fear that there's something terribly wrong in the bond markets, whereas this first leg down, I believe traders have been very complacent, not understanding that probably something is breaking in the bond markets.